Is the spirit of competition, the urge to go head-to-head, the sole reserve of men? In the 1950s and 60s, two women joined the fray. Two women with a shared name, Jacqueline, a shared passion, aviation, and a shared determination to become the world's fastest woman. Jackie versus Jackie is the story of a frenetic race to break speed records. An extraordinary transatlantic duel that lasted 15 years between Jacqueline Auriol, the first female test pilot in France, and the American Jacqueline Cochran, the first woman to break the sound barrier and the pilot who has held the most records in history of either sex. Beyond the rivalry between the two women was the prestige of their respective countries. In 1935, Jackie Cochran is a young pilot who is determined to challenge the top international pilots in the Bendix Trophy race. But she faces one major obstacle. The competition is reserved for men. It will take more than that to stop her. Jackie Cochran embarks on a battle to open the prestigious contest to women.
Yes, Jackie Cochran had to get a petition signed by every single other male pilot in the race. They did not want her to be injured. They did not want a woman's blood on their hands. It was very difficult for women to get into fast planes at the time.
Far away in France, a young woman has no idea she would soon become Cochran's rival. Her name is Jacqueline Duel, who will later become Jacqueline Auriol. An athletic thrill-seeker, she had a happy childhood in the family property at Châlons, Western France, and has never even heard of the Bendix Trophy. The Bendix Trophy was an occasion for pilots from around the world to face off. 3 years after her petition, Jackie Cochran won the race. The Bendix gave her her first taste of victory and was the start of her aeronautic legend. So it's not surprising that 8 years later, she wants to repeat the success. But each race has its history.
Jackie Cochran speaking. Do you read me? Jackie Cochran flying at 20,000 feet over the Grand Canyon. This is Jackie Cochran. Do you read me? I have no visibility. Anyone read me?
I'm Jackie Cochran, and as far as the border between California and Arizona, everything was fine. The forecast was for overcast weather, but not stormy. I'm awfully cold. My radio is broken. I'm so angry. I give it a really hard kick, but all I do is hurt my foot. The Grand Canyon can suck me along, and without my radio, I'll have to fly by compass, unless I can reach 30,000 feet and try to fly over the storm. But that's risky. I'm terribly heavy.
Jackie Cochran bought an Army surplus Mustang for $3,000, a good deal, apart from the late delivery, which meant she did not have time to make the modifications she wanted. Instead of converting the wings into fuel tanks, she only has time to add large external tanks which are ejectable, so they won't slow her down. She never takes her eye off the competition and knows that around 20 other competitors have the same type of fighter as her, but they've had time to modify their planes.
I'm shaken by an impact at the rear of the plane. What if it was a fuel tank? If it contains more than 30 gallons, I'll lose control in this turbulence. Do something. I've got to do something. Should I take the risk of climbing? 7,000 feet? 8,000 feet? Oh, I've made up my mind. I'm climbing.
The engine splutters, stops, then starts again several times. Her head is smashed against the canopy of the cockpit, which will leave her a lump the size of an egg.
I'm at the right altitude, in the right place. It's time to ditch those tanks. There's a violent crash, but it's impossible to see the extent of the damage. I can barely see my wings.
Jacqueline Cochran crosses the line in second place for the first Bendix Trophy after the war, a route covering 2,330 miles from Los Angeles to Cleveland, where 10 years earlier she had made her name.
This 1946 trophy was very special because it was right after World War II, and it was a chance for pilots to get back into the real life of aeronautics and away from the war.
Meanwhile, in France, Jacqueline Auriol is not yet a pilot. She has become an attractive young woman who longs to leave the provinces. Her early life was privileged, but aged 11, her life was turned upside down when her father, a wood importer, died suddenly. She became a boarder at the convent of Les Ursulines in Nantes, saying goodbye to her freedom. Jackie Cochran came from a very different underprivileged background. She had a drive to succeed from a young age. At 10, she was already working in a cotton factory, but she was practically illiterate.
Her first real paying job was in a cotton mill in Columbus, Georgia, and she loved getting the money. In fact, she was very notorious even then for telling people that someday she was going to be rich and famous. Of course, they would laugh at her. Jackie Cochran started working in a beauty salon, sweeping up the hair on the floor and washing heads. And at one point, she realizes that the big rage is all permanent waves. She learns this technique, and this is a technique that will hold her in good stead throughout her whole life. And she leaves the South then, heads for New York, about 1929, to find herself and her true life.
She starts a job in a beauty salon on Fifth Avenue, which gives her a ticket into high society circles. At a dinner party, Jackie tells one of the guests about her dream to create her own beauty products company operating across America, Jackie Cochran Cosmetics. The man laughs and advises her to learn to fly if she wants to succeed. He is even prepared to finance her company if she can obtain her pilot's license in 6 weeks. His name is Floyd Odlum, and he is the 10th richest man in the USA. Jackie doesn't realize that she will soon marry him.
Floyd had more money than anybody. He had investments in oil companies, in aeronautics, and in industry, all kinds of investments. In fact,
Jacqueline Cochran learned very quickly. In 1932, she went to the Roosevelt Airfield in New York, and she earned her pilot's license in less than 3 weeks. Even her instructor was surprised. One of the difficulties she had was passing the written exam because her education was very poor, and she ended up taking the exam orally rather than written.
Jacqueline Auriol would also discover aviation thanks to her future husband, Paul, son of the Socialist Minister of Finance, Vincent Auriol. They meet in Paris when she is studying at the Louvre School to become an interior decorator. On the other side of the Atlantic, Jacqueline Cochran throws her energy into commerce. She founds Jackie Cochran Cosmetics, and business is booming. Jackie has become an accomplished businesswoman, but she continues to fly. She loves everything to do with aviation. But the world is about to tip into turmoil with the outbreak of the Second World War. Jackie Cochran wants to serve her country, convinced that women pilots can play a key role. But the United States is not ready. Britain, however, welcomes her with open arms.
I've been flying for 9 years, and it's always been as a sporting event with me and for my own entertainment. For once, I've done something that I feel is a contribution to a cause that I'm in sympathy with Great Britain.
In the attack on Pearl Harbor, among 2,400 American victims are many pilots. That prompts the US Air Force to change its mind on women pilots and to call Jackie back to the United States.
she was given the mandate to start the Women's Air Force Service pilots. They called them the WASPs. And from 1943 to 44, she trained more than 1,000 female pilots on more than 100 bases. They did an amazing job for the war effort.
During the war, Jacqueline Auriol's husband Paul and her father-in-law Vincent Auriol join the resistance. Jacqueline has to escape the clutches of the Gestapo with her 2 young sons using forged ID papers. By good luck, the family is reunited at the end of the war, safe and sound, and closer than ever. Vincent Auriol, the father-in-law, to whom she was very attached, is elected President of the Republic in 1947.
Christmas week began in Paris with President Auriol guest of honor at a reception given by a major newspaper for its personalities of the year.
To distract her from the protocol, Paul arranges for her first flight, thinking she will enjoy the experience. And she does. After a year at the Élysée Palace, she obtains her tourism pilot's license and a month later, her second-level license. She was 31. At the same time in America, Miss Cochran is hitting the headlines with a series of records. From 1947 to 1949, Jacqueline Cochran and her Mustang P-51 rack up 4 new distance records over 2 miles, 300 miles, 600 and 1,200 miles. Jackie is more than ever one of the leading figures in modern aviation. Meanwhile, Jacqueline Auriol and her husband find themselves the target of slander aimed at harming the president. She now refuses all social engagements and dreams of becoming a military pilot. But they are all stunt flyers. Stunt flying becomes her all-consuming passion, which is finally rewarded after a year of effort with a demonstration.
In Auxerre, Mrs. Paul Auriol performs difficult aerobatic figures with both control and courage.
At last acknowledged in her own right, Jacqueline is invited a week later to another demonstration. It is a fine sunny day on Sunday, 11th of July, 1949. Jacqueline Auriol and her long-standing instructor Raymond Guillaume arrive at Toussus-le-Noble, a French naval base west of Paris, for a demonstration of an amphibious plane, the Scan 30. The constructor hopes to profit from the recent publicity surrounding Madame Auriol to show how easy the seaplane is to fly. If a woman can fly it, anyone can.
Moi, j'avais un vol qui m'amusait énormément et qui était un vol sur un petit amphibie.
Le Scan 30?
Le Scan 30. On devait décoller de Toussus, aller se poser au Mureau, puis revenir pour que je puisse prendre mon petit avion à une heure convenable pour pouvoir aller à la Baule, rejoindre tout le monde.
The crew take their places on the seaplane. Jacqueline is at the controls. She is only the co-pilot. The pilot sits to her left. Raymond Guillaume is behind her, accompanied by a mechanic. Jacqueline and Raymond are surprised by the pilot's sharp maneuvers. He's obviously trying to impress them. Those on the ground watch the seaplane's rapid movements open-mouthed. Each fly past, a few dozen yards above the stretch of water, draws oohs of admiration.
Lake approaching, bearing 175, light wind, climb.
After 15 minutes of flying, the pilot is confidently going through a series of maneuvers. On the shore, journalists, a photographer, and some technicians are watching the flight. The impact is brutal. The consequence is immediate. The mechanic escapes with simple contusions. Raymond Guillaume breaks some ribs, while the pilot fractures his collarbone. But Jacqueline is far more seriously injured, her face having slammed into the metal instrument panel. When she puts her hands to her face, she discovers a soft, shapeless mass. She has 3 fractures of the skull. Her face is so flattened that her eyeballs have been pushed inside. Her nose has been torn off and her jaw broken.
J'ai tout de suite senti que j'étais défigurée, alors que je n'y voyais pas. J'y voyais double, puisque j'avais un œil qui était ici.
Plus de nez, plus de pommettes,
plus de nez, plus de
mâchoire
pommettes, plus de
brisée.
dents.
After this terrible accident, which destroyed her face, Jacqueline Auriol underwent surgery at the Foch Hospital in Suresnes by Dr. Gineste, who was a specialist in disfigurement on the battlefield.
He saw her, and he dared to do what others had not dared to rebuild a head, a skull, because she had hit the instrument panel full on, and she was really squashed.
Maintenant, ma vie de jolie femme, elle est terminée, parce que quand on est jolie, on fait ça comme ça, et clac, 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 tout le monde se précipite pour faire... pour réaliser ce...
C'est facile de
que
vivre
vous
quand on est
souhaitez.
jolie, vous
Il n'y a
dites
pas
à
de
maman.
doute, il n'y a pas de doute, c'est très facile. Alors je dis maintenant, c'est cuit. Bon, maintenant les choses seront plus difficiles, mais pourquoi est-ce que de ma passion pour les avions, je ne ferai pas mon métier?
In the meantime, Jackie Cochran continues her quest to go faster, higher, and further than any other pilot. In 1950, the American aviator becomes the vice president of the Fédération Aéronautique Internationale. Between record attempts, Jackie likes to spend time with Floyd, who declares, "My wife is the most interesting person I have ever met." At the same time, Jacqueline Auriol bravely undergoes 22 operations. The surgeons work miracles, and although she suffers a lot, her facial reconstruction is a great success. Jacqueline wants to live and to fly.
There's always one place which all pilots dream of, where the crème de la crème fly, and that's the test flight centre in Bretigny.
Determined to join the prestigious test flight centre at Bretigny-sur-Orge, south of Paris, where only men are admitted, she intends to make this dream come true. And if that means hard work to be accepted, she's ready.
In the 1950s, there were very few women pilots, because women were glorified in the home. What's more, women in France only had the right to vote from 1944, so in the 1950s, we were really only just fully fledged citizens. And since at that time there were very few women pilots, you really had to fight your corner, which is exactly what Jacqueline Cochran did, to have the right to participate at a rally, for example, or in a race.
For her part, Jackie Cochran wants to enlarge her collection of records. Floyd has been close to all the US presidents since his early days in finance. Jackie has the audacity, Floyd has the money and the connections, and Jackie is persuasive.
After the war, the United States was probably the most powerful country. This was difficult for France because they had an amazing history of aeronautics. They had been the place in the world to do the records and set the standards for it, so it was difficult.
After the war, the French aviation sector is in tatters.
Fortunately, General de Gaulle decided to back aeronautical development. He realized that during the war, France had fallen behind in this area, so now it was in full expansion.
Tout de suite après la guerre, c'était une véritable épopée que l'aviation française. Ça a été fantastique, on n'avait plus un seul avion.
But with the signing of the NATO treaties, de Gaulle obtained some Allied planes on loan. Some British Vampires arrive in France. The Vampire is a jet fighter which has the potential to fly faster than the propeller-driven Mustang P-51, which Cochran is using. But who will pilot it? Jacqueline Auriol has never flown a jet plane before, and the lightning-fast Vampire is a single-seater. So before taking the controls, she has to train on a twin-seater jet plane equipped with an 800 horsepower engine. This is her first attempt on a speed record and the start of her duel with the world's most competitive female aviator. But beating Jacqueline Cochran means careful preparation and requires the backing of an entire team.
Engineers, mechanics, observers, and guides are all brought in around me. My plane's performance is analyzed in detail to get the very best out of it. This Mistral, which I'm going to fly, is the improved version of the Vampire, a British fighter plane designed for the Royal Air Force.
This jet plane is an impressive-looking beast, a 38-foot wingspan, 30 feet long, and just over 6 feet high. It weighs more than 5 tons. But its chief characteristics are that it's a single-seater with a jet engine capable of reaching a speed of 550 miles per hour at 30,000 feet.
After the war, American women returned to their homes. This is what was expected of them. Very few of the women air service pilots ever flew again after World War II. Jacqueline Cochran was one of only a few women who took to the air after the war.
No one could imagine that a woman could be a test pilot, especially in such a difficult discipline. So there was all the more reason to prove that we were capable of doing this.
In 1960, the Catholic school book on home economics sets out the code of conduct that a woman should adopt towards her husband. Let him speak first. Remember that his topics of conversation are more important than yours.
I spend hours alone at the controls, my eyes closed, training my fingers endlessly. Finding and operating the switches without being able to see them. I want to fly like I breathe without thinking about it. But when would they let me do it? They finally let me fire up the jet engine. What intoxicating power. It courses through my veins. My Vampire Mistral has the most sensitive rudder I've ever encountered. It responds to the tiniest pressure on the controls. The sky belongs to me, and I have only one desire, to set a new women's speed record. 25 minutes of fresh impressions. But I'm only allowed to roll along on the ground.
Madame Paul Auriol va tenter de battre le record féminin du monde de vitesse en circuit fermé. Ce record appartient depuis 4 ans à l'American Jacqueline Cochran avec 755 km 668 de moyenne.
I have nothing to lose and everything to gain in an instant. The mechanics have checked everything, right down to my installation in the cockpit. From the control tower, Guillaume at last gives me permission to take off. I have to concentrate on my flight plan. From Istres to Villeneuve-les-Avignon and back, a distance of 62 miles, or 2 times 31 miles in a straight line, with a 180-degree turn at the halfway point. I get up to speed at 3,000 feet. I'm going to cross the start line. I'm off.
On the bridge of Benazet, a timekeeper watches the sky and waits. Jacqueline has no idea what her time is. All that counts is pushing the plane to the limit.
Jacqueline, the record is beaten.
Jacqueline just flew the 62 miles in 7 minutes and 20 seconds. With an average of 508 miles per hour, she beats Jacqueline Cochran's record by 38 miles per hour. Jacqueline Auriol has just entered the history books.
À Bretigny, la croix de chevalier de la Légion d'honneur est remise à Madame Jacqueline Auriol, détentrice du record de vitesse en avion à réacteur. Le mari et les 2 enfants de l'héroïne suivent avec émotion la cérémonie. La belle-fille du président de la République française a largement mérité cet honneur pour ses audacieuses performances en avion militaire, ce qui lui vaut un baiser de son époux.
The supreme reward comes when the Fédération Aéronautique Internationale recognizes her feat. In Washington, President Truman officially presents Jacqueline Auriol with her first Harmon Trophy, the highest aeronautical distinction which rewards the exploits of the best aviator of the year. Jacqueline Auriol is crowned the world's fastest woman. The same would happen 2 years in a row.
Jacqueline Cochran was very gracious, even though Jacqueline Auriol had beat her record. She even requested that Jacqueline Auriol receive the Harmon Trophy.
Back in France, the Aero Club de France Award for her achievement adds to Jacqueline Auriol's fame. She obtains her military pilot's license, taking another step towards her dream of joining the Test Flight Center and becoming a test pilot.
Jacqueline Cochran never liked to lose, and while she appreciated Jacqueline Auriol as a skillful pilot, she didn't like the fact that she had broke her record and was very anxious to prove herself as the better pilot.
What she needs, above all, is a jet-powered plane to beat her European rival. She and her husband are very close to the newly elected President Eisenhower, but the US government is not about to give Jackie a jet plane so she can satisfy her appetite for glory. But the single-minded Jackie is an aeronautic consultant for the Canadians, so she decides to turn to them. Her husband, Floyd, has taken a controlling stake in Canadair Limited, so he naturally helps her launch her counter-challenge. It is at the controls of an ultra-modern and ultra-fast Canadian Sabre F-86 on loan for 90 days that Jackie Cochran sets out to take back Jacqueline Auriol's record. The Sabre is a single-seater fighter plane with a jet engine capable of 690 miles per hour. In other words, Mach 1, the speed of sound, making it the world's fastest plane. With such an aircraft, Jackie Cochran is sure of taking her revenge, apart from one detail. She has never flown a jet plane before.
Chuck Yeager had broken the sound barrier for setting the male's record, and Jackie and Chuck Yeager were fast friends. They were very close.
Chuck Yeager was the first man to break the sound barrier in 1947. Only a handful of pilots have since taken on the challenge. Jacqueline Cochran wants to be the first woman to do it, despite the dangers. As a plane approaches Mach 1, the controls tend to stiffen and the plane becomes unstable. The air becomes so compressed around the plane that it becomes difficult to steer. Once the speed becomes equal to or greater than that of sound, the compressed air produces a shock wave that is heard as a sonic boom. This can be particularly dangerous. The sonic boom had already torn apart several planes, costing the lives of the pilots. Only a few brave pilots risk going there. Breaking the sound barrier requires control, resilience, and intrepidness. The pilot has to face the shockwave and the heavy vibrations this causes and remain convinced that everything will be fine at speeds above Mach 1. For the record to be approved, the flight must also be carried out at low altitude, which is terrifying. For Jackie, it's a matter of mind over matter.
Control tower, proceed to runway number 1. Permission to take off.
The route is circular, covering 62 miles marked out by 12 pylons, which she has to fly outside. Unlike her 5 training flights, Jackie has to incline the plane at 30 degrees from the horizontal throughout the route. During the circuit, the plane must fly at low altitude, no more than 300 feet, to allow the recording apparatus to register its passage over the start and finish line. On the day, There are a total of 40 observers, judges and timekeepers. 2 observers are placed at each pylon. 2 groups of officials equipped with time recorders accurate to 1/10,000th of a second are also in position. Official planes fly the circuit equipped with altimeter recorders. The cameras are ready to immortalize the moment, and Chuck Yeager, the best wingman Jackie could have dreamt of, is alongside her. She has enough fuel to make 2 laps at full throttle, which will leave her just 2 minutes flying time afterwards.
Jackie, you're at 500 miles per hour. This is the control tower. Jackie, do you read me? Jackie? Control tower. Jackie?
This is Jackie. I'm flying at Mach 1. I can see the stars twinkling in the middle of the day.
Jackie reaches 650 miles an hour. She not only topples Jacqueline Auriol's record at 528 miles per hour and wins back her place as the world's fastest woman, but she writes her name in the history books as the first woman ever to break the sound barrier.
For those who went through it for the first time, it was very difficult because the shockwave was very violent, emitting massive vibrations, and lots of planes are disintegrated.
Breaking the sound barrier for Jackie Cochran in the United States I think it opened the field of aviation to women. I mean, it proved to the world that women could be just as competent in airplanes as men. With this overwhelming victory, Jackie Cochran was sure to be done with Jacqueline Auriol.
But that does not take into account the other Jacqueline's determination. She is not upset at seeing herself beaten by a woman whom she holds in high esteem. On the contrary, the elegant Mrs. Auriol sees Jackie Cochran's record as a fresh opportunity to prove her own worth. Since her record, she has come a step closer to joining the test centre, but has still not been admitted. She likes the idea of flying at the limit of a plane's capacities and making a bid for the sound barrier. Jackie Cochran has finally presented her with a new challenge. Will she snatch the title back? Jacqueline makes her double sonic boom at 44,000 feet and joins Jackie's center stage. The first woman to break the sound barrier in America was indeed Jacqueline Cochran, but the first in Europe is Jacqueline Auriol. The French aviator has not broken her rival's speed record, but she loved pulling off the exploit of flying at the speed of sound. What's more, this latest accomplishment means she is finally accepted into the test pilot school. Located near Paris, the CEV, as it's known, is very prestigious. It tests and verifies all civil and military aircraft made in France. Not a single onboard instrument is neglected. The centre employs instructors, engineers, researchers, mechanics, and test pilots, all of them men, for the most part crack aviators. In the centre's masculine environment, Jacqueline Auriol does meet one other woman who will become a great friend. Valérie André is at the time a military doctor and one of the few women helicopter pilots. She would save lives during the wars in Algeria and Indochina and become France's first female general. Valérie remembers what Jacqueline told her.
To be a test pilot, there is an entry exam, and it is very closely scrutinized. You don't just get in like that.
C'est farci un an de mathématiques avec ingénieur ni polytechnicien, puis c'est tout. Et elle a passé son examen de pilote d'essai les doigts dans le nez.
À partir du moment où on m'a laissé faire l'école d'essai, ça y est, c'était gagné.
With the registration number 29, Jacqueline Auriol becomes France's first ever woman test pilot and finally joins the prestigious Test Flight Centre.
Jackie Cochran, I believe, was upset. She did not want Jacqueline Auriol to have this speed record. Jackie Cochran was afraid of being beaten by Jacqueline Auriol because Jacqueline Auriol was also an amazing pilot. Jackie Cochran knew that there was a new French plane about to be tested, the Mystère, and she knew that if Jacqueline Auriol got in this plane, she could definitely beat her record.
The Mystère 4 scared Jacqueline Cochran because she knew very well that this plane could beat her record.
Jackie Cochran played a part as her role as vice president to abolish the women's speed records.
Donc c'est quand même
It was competitive betrayal to decide 10 days beforehand that they would abolish female records, leaving Jacqueline Auriol 10 days and inviting her to the United States for 8 or 9 days.
Jackie Cochran invites Jacqueline Auriol to stay with her in New York on the pretext of a party organized by Pan Am.
Jackie Cochran did this in order to remain the last female pilot to fly as fast as she had. She wanted to be the fastest pilot in the world, and she didn't want Jacqueline Auriol to recapture that title.
On était le contraire l'une de l'autre. Quand je la battais, elle était désespérée. Mais vraiment, c'était affreux. Elle n'endormait plus. Enfin bon, elle était désespérée. Moi, quand elle me battait, car elle m'a beaucoup rebattue aussi. Moi, j'étais aux anges parce que ça allait me donner la possibilité de refaire un nouveau record.
While her method is not exactly fair play, it is understandable that Jackie Cochran in her Sabre has good reason to fear Jacqueline Auriol in a Mystère 4. The latest prototype from Dassault illustrates the incredible boom in the French aeronautics industry since 1950. Having imported foreign planes, French aircraft manufacturers are now building their own planes. Since joining NATO, France has enjoyed aid from the United States, which has allowed it to rebuild its air force and plan for the future. The performance of the latest models from the Dassault factories strike fear into those beyond French borders. Behind each record lie national and industrial interests. The constructor is quite legitimately hoping for a boost in sales.
For aircraft manufacturers, there were economic benefits because afterwards the plane sold more, so it's very advantageous. And on top of that, it's prestigious to have lovely machines and to beat records.
Au centre d'essai, je vole sur des avions qui remplissent les conditions de réussite d'un record. Ce n'est pas moi, au fond, qui vais battre ce record. C'est l'avion.
The record underlines the talent in French technology and makes a nation proud that it is capable of holding its own on the international stage in the prestigious domain of aeronautics. These fighter planes make a sensational entrance into the jet age. With the advent of jet engines, speed is making distances seem shorter. This promises a revolution in transport. Civil aviation is about to come within the reach of the masses. Flights are becoming 2 or 3 times faster, making business travelers and tourists much more mobile. Industrial advances in aeronautics are about to open up the world of international trade. But before that, the Mystère 4 has to prove it has earned its French wings. Jacqueline Auriol is surprised by Jackie's ruse. She declines the invitation designed to stop her obtaining the women's record. In fact, she's dying to outdo her rival, and she only has 8 days left in which to do so. Jacqueline throws everything into it. The steps required to establish a record are usually long and complicated, but on this occasion, national pride is at stake. Everyone pulls together to make it happen. It's a real miracle. Jacqueline is given a Mystère 4N and a team of more than 20 who work flat out. The Mystère 4 is a 2-seater supersonic fighter bomber powered by a Rolls-Royce engine with an afterburner. Three days after the FAI's announcement, Jacqueline makes her first flight by night. She has 1,100 flying hours behind her, including more than 200 in jet planes. 4 days after obtaining all the necessary authorizations, Jacqueline Auriol is ready to make her attempt on the record. The challenge is simple, yet exhilarating. Either the final women's airspeed record will remain forever in American hands, or it will become French. The date is set for the 27th of May. The record attempt will take place south of Paris, between Bretigny and Savigny-le-Temple. Jacqueline feels as though she is taming a wild horse at more than 500 miles per hour. She is at full power, flying at 0 feet. In the air, the turn is one of the hardest maneuvers. Its arc must have a radius of 15 miles, so that the plane can turn comfortably through 180 degrees.
Bring it in. Cut back.
At the turning point, Jacqueline gives herself some margin to gain a little speed from diving. The mist hampers her visibility. She says to the control tower,
"I'm lost."
This unexpected announcement terrifies the team. Jacqueline seems to be foretelling disaster. The plane is about to break up. They break out in a cold sweat, imagining her hitting the ground. Jacqueline recovers her bearings and steadies the plane. She concentrates on maintaining a constant altitude. She is at more than 3,000 feet, but cannot vary by more than 150 feet without compromising the record attempt. At 715 miles per hour, the record is smashed. Jacqueline Auriol holds the last women's airspeed record 1 day before the cutoff date.
Ça me fait terriblement plaisir d'avoir enlevé ce titre sur un avion français, puis que ça soit une Française, justement, qui soit la femme la plus rapide du monde.
Can Jackie Cochran accept this, or will she want revenge? That is, unless she embarks on a new challenge.
Jackie Cochran was not a woman who accepted defeat easily. She decided to run for Congress in the United States from her district in California in the 1950s, and she campaigned hard for months and months and months. She lost. She was devastated by this loss, and she decided after that to turn her attention back to setting more speed records.
While Jackie Cochran tries her hand at politics, Jacqueline Auriol is enjoying her job as test pilot to the full, but each flight brings its own challenges. On a lovely sunny day, Jacqueline is at the controls of a Mystère 4N. She carries out a training run to prepare for a demonstration of the aircraft due the following day in Munich. It is the first time the Mystère 4 will be presented in Germany, so the demonstration has to be impeccable. Her mission is to break the sound barrier and perform some aerobatic maneuvers. This calls for extreme precision so that the sonic boom will reverberate in the grandstand. Jacqueline is required to aim for the base, then once lined up exceed Mach 1 and continue to dive at full throttle before going into a series of figures a fraction of a second after the boom. The first run from 40,000 feet does not deliver.
Control tower at 29. Your boom was poorly aimed. The test was not a success. Ready for a second run?
Jacqueline climbs again to 35,000 feet, so the boom will be heard better. Suddenly, the rudder fails. Jacqueline has no time to think. The plane goes into a dangerous flat spin.
Or la vrille...
Une vrille malsaine.
Oui, exactement. Elle était très malsaine. C'est-à-dire que c'était une vrille à plat qui faisait tchoc comme ça et qui retournait, alors qu'une vrille saine, c'était une vrille qui fait ça. Qui vrille bien avec le nez au milieu, comme ça, le nez vers le sol.
I can no longer hold the plane. I've got a problem with the fin.
Jacqueline, do you read me? Jacqueline, listen. Jacqueline, answer me. Please, keep a clear head.
Je suis partie dans le noir et je me suis dit, mon Dieu, comme c'est passionnant. C'est aujourd'hui, c'est l'instant de ta mort. Enfin, tu vas savoir.
The plane's controls are electric, but fortunately her plane was fitted 2 days earlier with an emergency manual lever located on the right of the instrument panel to deal with possible rudder failure in a spin. This mechanical control is held by a wire, which has to be removed so the lever can be pushed forward, activating the rudder and regaining control of the aircraft. Jacqueline is struggling. The centrifugal acceleration is extremely violent. Her G-force indicator rises to 12. The pressure is unbearable.
Ma main, quand je me suis réveillée, a continué le mouvement, c'est-à-dire de faire basculer ce petit machin mécaniquement vers l'avant. Et mon masque était décroché, je l'ai raccroché. Puis j'ai regardé dedans, mais j'ai regardé surtout dehors et j'étais en vrille.
Jacqueline, we can overcome a tail fin problem. It's not lost.
She suddenly remembers the advice of a test pilot with whom she had had lunch the day before. In case she found herself in a spin, in order to stop it, Jacqueline has to do something radical.
Il faut se donner vraiment un coup de pied dans le derrière parce que tout mettre dans le sens de la vrille, il faut en principe mettre son manche au milieu. La voix de Guillaume m'avait dit en l'air, vous avez le temps de vous poser, faites un petit tour bien paisible avant de vous poser. Mais moi j'avais envie de me poser tout de suite. Je me suis posé avec un avion tout tordu, devant les hangars. J'ai trouvé 5 momies et moi je me suis précipité sur tous pour les embrasser fougueusement. Il n'y en a pas un qui m'ait pris dans ses bras. Pas.
Il avait eu trop peur.
Il avait eu trop peur.
For her part, Jackie Cochran is only afraid of one thing, not regaining her first place. But she hasn't said her final word. Having become president of the FAI, Jackie's first move is to re-establish female records.
À Murocleg, l'aviatrice américaine Jacqueline Cochran a, sur un circuit de 150 km, dépassé la vitesse des 1000 km/h. Miss Cochran a repris à Madame Jacqueline Auriol le titre de la femme la plus vite du monde.
Istres. Dans ce Mirage 3C, le pilote d'essai Jacqueline Auriol, guidé du sol par l'ingénieur Durand, tente de battre le record féminin de vitesse en circuit fermé que détient avec 1250 à l'heure l'américaine Jacqueline Cochran.
Vous avez monté comme ça jusqu'à 38 000 pieds de flottation.
At the helm of exceptional aircraft made available by Dassault, Jacqueline Auriol is not through with Miss Cochran. 1 year later, in a Mirage 3C, she reaches a speed of 1,149 miles per hour, 364 miles per hour faster. And the following year, Jacqueline Auriol lights up the skies flying at Mach 2 in a Mirage 3R.
Un nouveau record pour l'aviation française et un bouquet pour le pilote.
Jackie Cochran takes up the gauntlet the following year, in 1963, scoring a final victory over Jacqueline Auriol at the age of 57. The American retires from competition soon afterwards, bringing an end to this intense duel which has lasted for 15 years. Jackie and Jackie have fought against one another, but they have also had to confront the prejudices of men to become the world's fastest women. These magnificent ambassadors of blossoming female achievement show that courage and skill can take a feminine form, even in the air, as women on the wing.